Hello and welcome to the security management video on Project Server 2007. In this video, we'll look into how security is managed on the Project Server 2007. Security management in Project Server 2007 is managed by these 5 areas: Project Web Access Permissions, managing users, groups, managing categories, and security templates. Before we go ahead and look into what are the security permissions that can be set using these 5 areas, we would like to know more about the security implementation in Project Server 2007. Security is separated into 2 distinct areas. One is the global permissions and 2 is the category permissions. When we say global permissions, these define what users can do on the system. What level of access do these users have? In Project Server 2007, we define users based on their roles like project managers, portfolio managers, executives, administrators. So the permissions for these groups are assigned by the global permissions. The next security aspect is the category permissions. Category permissions define what information is available to these users. The information security is implemented using the category permissions. So we'll go ahead and look into all the details of the global permissions and category permissions using these 5 areas: the Project Web Access permissions, manage users, groups, categories, and security templates. Let's touch upon each of these in brief. The Project Web Access permissions is the place where you enable or disable a functionality for the complete instance of the project server. We'll see in detail in the demonstration how we use the Project Web Access permissions to enable or disable functionality on the project server. Managing users and groups is a pretty straightforward security that most of the administrators have seen, that you define users, groups, and set permissions to these users and groups. Manage categories is the place where you define the category permissions, what kind of information visibility is available to users and groups. For instance, let's take a business case that we do not want all the users to see what kind of projects are running in the marketing, finance departments, and so on. We define the category that only finance users will be able to see the finance projects. So we look into it in more detail in how we manage categories. The last one is the security template. Security template is the place where you define a role-based security in terms of both data access and functionality. So security templates are basically used to define both global and category permissions to a particular user role, and then extract these templates to apply these security to the users and groups and categories in the Project Web Access. So let's go ahead and try to define all these areas and see how security is implemented in the Project Server 2007. I would like to show you the security model implementation in Project Server in a graphical representation. The server configuration is the place where you define Project Web Access permissions. At this level, you define what are the functions that are enabled for a particular project server instance. Under this, we have role-based security templates. You define a security template for a particular user role. You define what are the data permissions and what are the category permissions. And then you can create groups and categories by extracting the security that is defined in a particular security template. And then you have users who are members of this group, and category permissions can be applied to both the groups and users. So let's go ahead and see how we can define project level web access permissions, how we can define users, groups, security templates, how we can define categories and apply the security to the Project Server 2007. Having seen all the security concepts, let's go ahead and actually see how the Project Web Access permissions can be implemented on the Project Server. In this session, I have logged in as a system account. That's the APM admin account for this instance of Project Web Access. To set the Project Web Access permissions, let's go to server settings. The first option under the security panel, you have manage users, groups, manage categories, security templates, and Project Web Access permissions. This is the place where you implement security to your Project Server 2007. And as we've said, that Project Web Access permissions is the place where you enable or disable a functionality to a particular instance of the project server. So let's go ahead and see how we can enable or disable a functionality for the project instance. Before we jump in, let me fire up another instance of the project server. And in this session, I will log in as administrator. And administrator is a regular user to this Project Web Access. So do not take the administrator as having the admin functionality. Okay, come back to the system account session, that's the EPM admin. And for instance, one of the functionality for the Prod Web Access is to download the Outlook plugin and synchronize your tasks on the Outlook. So under personal settings, I have set up Outlook sync. When I click on this, it will allow me to download a small plugin that would work with the Outlook. For some reason, in my instance, I want to disable this functionality, that I do not want users to use the Outlook Web Access, the Outlook plugin to work with on their project tasks. So I need to disable this. When I click on Project Web Permissions, I have all the functionality that I can enable or disable for this particular Project Web Access instance. So to disable the Outlook plugin, under the General section, I have Download Project Web Access Outlook add-in. It's enabled, and I disable this functionality and I hit save. What this would do is it would disable the functionality of downloading the plugin for the particular instance. As this screen is from a previous session, let me go ahead and click the personal settings again, and this time I won't be seeing that option to download the Outlook plugin. In this manner, you can go ahead and enable or disable a functionality on the particular project server instance. Feel free to go ahead and explore all these functionalities that you can enable and disable for the instance. Change password, manage personal notifications. Depending on your requirement, you can come here and you can enable or disable. Let me enable the functionality back, and I hit save. If I come back to the session, which is the admin session, and refresh it, I would see the download facility for the Outlook sync. So in this manner, I can enable or disable functionality using the Project Web Access permissions on the Project Server 2007. Let's go ahead and view the other aspects of the security.